Welcome, Kemosabe. I'm Detective Lloyd Gross, and this is the Enlistment and Briefing episode of the Anti Strangling Task Force. In this episode, we're going to cover the following. We're going to overview the individual teams within the task force, how to enlist in the task force, the rules of engagement, must-have information, and the must-know information. Now, as I've already mentioned, guys, the scope of this task is greater than you could have ever imagined. Right? Finding the Scranton Strangler was easy. That's not the challenge. The nature of the challenge involves multiple aspects and will require multiple teams focusing on their unique directives. Now, this is a very brief overview of each of the teams. The detailed overviews are on Patreon. Now, out of respect for the Curse of Three, I have posted 3 of them to YouTube for your convenience. Now, before you jump ahead and watch the individual overviews, they are meant to be watched in a particular order. And before you watch the overviews, I would strongly suggest you jump to the next episode, which is the Season 1 overview, and then watch the Task Force overviews after that, because some of the things are not going to make sense unless you've seen that first. So let's get straight into it. The first is the Extraterrestrial Time Traveling Task Force. The Future, Discussing the Future, Back to the Future, and the Terminator are all very strong motifs in the show. And I've created a future motif video which is available on YouTube right now for you guys to take a look at. Now, the reason this is a motif, guys, is because Dwight Schrute is a time traveler. He's stuck in a time loop. It's an infinite time loop. And I believe his primary goal is trying to fix his family. He's going into the past to try and prevent the series of events which would lead to the creation of the Scranton Strangler. Not only does he have time traveling capabilities, but his family has time traveling capabilities as well. And there's at least one moment in the show where I believe we actually see time traveling occurring. The detailed overview covers how Dwight harnesses his time traveling capabilities, and it also covers the infinite time loop. This particular detailed overview is available on Patreon. The next one is Great Scott Film Forensics. There are hundreds of movies referenced in the show, and the concept of being a cinephile or a movie buff or into movies is a repeated motif in the show. The reference to these movies are not simply there for pop cultural references. They provide us with the building blocks or the missing pieces of the story of Dwight's life. It is through the references to movies, coupled with various motifs and the things that Dwight says. For example, where we find out that Dwight, at some point in the past, came out of the grave. He was resurrected from the dead. So if you're a movie buff, this is the team for you, and this particular overview is available on YouTube. Next is the Woof Emergency Response Team. At the peak of the show airing, NBC released a significant amount of extracurricular material. This material has since been taken down from the website but is still available on the web archives. Some of the things they released were Creed Thoughts, the Diabolical blog, Dwight and Angela's parenting contract, and there's a whole lot more, guys, right? And there are clues scattered throughout this material that helps us fill in gaps to the story of Dwight's life. For example, it is via this material that we are able to find confirmation that Dwight is not, in fact, the #1 salesman in the company. So if you're someone that likes it dog style, this is the team for you, and this overview is available on Patreon. Next is the Hay Place Bounty Hunters. This is a Where's Waldo type task force. In the background of every episode in the set, there is always hidden little objects which provide us with additional information or clues as to the greater nature of the mystery. This task force will be responsible for looking at the set with a magnifying glass. right? And bringing back those findings to the task force and fitting them in to the wider story at hand. So for all those people who want to be Hey King, this is the task force for you, and this overview is available on Patreon. Next is the colorblind financial fraud regulator. There is significant financial fraud occurring in the office. We're talking about customer theft, parallel paper businesses, even the growing of commercial quantities of marijuana and the distribution of those drugs, possibly on a global scale. This task force will be responsible for crunching the numbers and getting to the bottom of this financial fraud. So if you're a gay Mexican, this is the task force for you, and this particular overview is available on Patreon. Next is the Office Ladies Tactical Interrogation Unit. The Office Ladies at this stage cannot be trusted. They will remain guilty until proven innocent. There is a significant amount of information shared around the production of the show. And believe it or not, guys, they are intentionally or unintentionally revealing a significant amount of information about how this mystery was hidden and how it was kept a secret from the majority of the people on set. The Office Ladies are officially under investigation by the Anti Strangling Task Force as accomplices to the Scranton Strangler Conspiracy until they provide a statement under oath and an alibi to which the Anti Strangling Task Force will decide their fate. So if you're a medium pregs sort of a person, this is the task force for you. This overview is available on YouTube. Next is Rogue Squadron. This is a dynamic and tactical team that is able to pick up the pieces and focus on the building blocks that are not being investigated by the other teams. Rogue Squadron has the freedom to do whatever it likes, but I do provide a little bit of guidance and a little bit more information at the nature of this mystery and the game that we are playing. I've said a number of times now, guys, we are playing a game. This episode will explain to you what that game is. So if you're a renegade, join the fist and become a part of Rogue Squadron. This overview is available on YouTube. Last but not least, we've got the Bob Kazamakis Sex Investigation Squad. Now, I don't think I really need to explain this one to you, right? Everything pertaining to this task force is strictly going to be on Patreon. I should mention now that Patreon is an 18+ only zone, including the Discord channel. If you're a Bob Kazamakis, you're probably already on Patreon right now. Now, I should mention, guys, every bit of content pertaining to this task force is never going to be shared on YouTube, unfortunately. Everything pertaining to this element of the mystery is only going to be available on Patreon. So if you're a Bob Kazamakis, this is the team for you, and this overview is available on Patreon. Now, there are ultimately 4 platforms that are going to be involved in this investigation: YouTube, Patreon and Discord, and Reddit. Now, regarding Enlistment, headquarters for the Anti Strangling Task Force will be on Patreon. There are 3 tiers on Patreon: the junior employee tier, the assistant to the detective tier, and assistant detective tier. The junior employee tier will have access to Discord for life. Once you join the Anti Strangling Task Force, you will be a member for life. In addition to that, all the additional individual team overviews are currently available on the lowest tier, because ultimately people are going to have to understand the teams in a little bit more detail in order to make their decision to which one they are going to take part in. So upon joining the Anti Strangling Task Force at the junior employee tier, you will have Discord access for life, and you will also have access to the other 5 episodes immediately. The next tier is the assistant to the detective tier. This tier will have access to an additional video every fortnight. Now, I just want to mention, guys, really, I want to be covering 1 episode of the show every single week. So that will mean 1 video on YouTube and 1 video on Patreon. If we're doing 1 per fortnight, we're not going to get through the episodes in any less than 8 years, and that's just not acceptable, right? So really, we're going to be doing 1 episode per week. The reason I've committed to 1 episode a fortnight is in the event we get stuck on a puzzle. So if we get stuck on a puzzle, the Anti Strangling Task Force is going to have to work it out, right? And then it gives us a little bit of breathing room in order to solve that mystery. Right, but I can tell you now, guys, I've solved a significant number of the puzzles already. Right, so at least for the first couple of seasons, we're really going to be having 1 episode a week on both YouTube and Patreon. When I post an episode on YouTube, there'll be one on Patreon, and when there's one on Patreon, there'll be one in YouTube. We are covering 1 episode of the show with 2 episodes of the task force. The third tier is the assistant detective tier. It is exactly the same as the assistant to the detective tier. However,
plus, there's some other good news. Today, at the end of the day, I will have, for all of you, a big surprise. Okay? So hang in there, and I will see you at the end of the day. All right?
At the end of the investigation, there's going to be a big surprise. And I'm not going to tell you what that big surprise is yet now, right? I might reveal it to everyone once we get to season 8 and season 9, but it's going to be a big surprise. Now, fortunately, you don't have to be on the top tier to be eligible for the big surprise. All submissions and findings that are of a quality nature and that the task force deems as integral to the mystery will be awarded with an assistant detective promotion and access to the big surprise. Not only that, if you're not on Patreon, you're still able to contribute and be eligible for the big surprise via the Anti Strangling Task Force Reddit page. However, obviously, you will not have access to the additional videos. Now, should the task force become great in number, I will need assistance in the way of team leaders and moderators. All team leaders and moderators will also be granted access to the big surprise. But to be honest with you guys, the easiest way to get the big surprise is to become a part of the investigation and find clues, solve mysteries, right? So if you find something that's of importance and value, you will be promoted to assistant detective and have access to the big surprise. Now, just one thing I want to briefly mention, guys, it is up to my discretion. I've been studying this mystery for 4 years. If you find something floating in the shallow end and on top, I've probably already seen it, right? So I'm really looking for submissions which are unique and that I have not yet seen. But I am going to be sincere about it all, and if there's a great find, those people will be promoted to assistant detective and be eligible for the big surprise. Now, as already mentioned, the 4 platforms are YouTube, Patreon and Discord, and Reddit. The videos I'll be posting to YouTube are the primary findings. There is always a main vein in each episode of the show. But what you're soon going to find out, guys, is really there's a lot going on in every single episode. It's very easy to do even 3 or 4 videos per episode. And at the moment, you may be like, what are you talking about? I really mean it. The mystery is a lot deeper than you think. So the main vein is going to be put on YouTube, and all the ancillary and complementary findings are going to be on Patreon. Not only that, the Anti Strangling Task Force findings are also going to be updated in separate videos on Patreon. So we're likely looking at more than 1 video a week on Patreon, but occasionally I will share certain findings from the task force on YouTube. Specifically, promotions of detectives to assistant detective will be recognized and awarded on the YouTube channel. So what are you waiting for, Kemosabe? The Anti Strangling Task Force needs you. Which brings me to the rules of engagement. Our allegiance is to the truth. We are going to follow the clues where they lead us, guys. I can tell you now, a lot of this stuff you may not like, right? I didn't create the mystery. I've just simply worked out large parts of it. So I'm giving you a warning. A lot of it might really annoy you. However, our allegiance is to the truth. We're going to follow the clues and let the information lead us to the conclusion, right? So our allegiance is to the truth, whether we like it or not. No politics. I'm not someone who watches The Office because I want to be reminded of how terrible the world can be sometimes. I watch The Office because I want to chill out, relax, have a good time, and have some fun. So similarly to the show, guys, this task force is an oasis. We are here to have fun. Everybody is welcome, of all types of people and races, religions and persuasions and political views. I really don't care who or what or where you come from or what you believe in. This is an oasis, right? Everybody is welcome, and all of us are going to unite to solve this mystery. Right, so no politics. This is an oasis. If you get all political, right, you're going to be banned instantly. I don't care. You're going to be banned. However, there's one caveat to this rule. We will consider political inferences or political consequences insofar as much as they might pertain to the mystery, or as much as they might pertain to the creators of the show. If there's an element of the mystery which may get political or which may reference certain social issues or whatever it is, we are going to investigate it, right? Because of course it's a part of the mystery. And I can tell you now, there are some elements that relate to various social issues and social phenomena, right, which we are going to have to cover. In fact, the next episode on Patreon is going to be about this. I'm going to prepare the Anti Strangling Task Force for a couple of bits and pieces. But by and large, guys, everybody is welcome, right? Everybody is welcome. If you get all political here, you're going to be booted out of the task force, right? Don't be a Toby Flenderson. Be respectful. There's probably going to be times when we disagree. I mean, if you jump onto the Dunder Mifflin Reddit, people are disagreeing all the time. Some people hate Jim, some people hate Pam, some people hate both of them, right? Everyone is welcome to their opinion. I want to remind everybody that we're investigating the same mystery, right? So ultimately, we're all on the same team. And what you're going to find out in the Rogue Squadron overview is that the room for disagreement, believe it or not, is relatively little. That may not make sense right now, right? But the nature of the mystery is we are able to include multiple opinions and theories, right? As long as they can be justified and solidified. And watch the Rogue Squadron overview if you want to understand more of what I mean by that, right? But even if we should disagree about something, guys, we'll put it to a vote, right? We'll do a poll in Discord, and whatever's voted on, that's what we keep, right? So please be respectful. Don't get angry. If you disagree, I mean, it's normal to disagree, but let's just all remind ourselves that we're on the same team. Under no circumstances will you be insubordinate. I set the rules and you follow them blindly. You will not foment insurrection. And last but not least, let's have fun. The creators of the show made more than just a show for us to watch. They've created a game for us. This is the moment they've been waiting for. It's the moment you don't know you've been waiting for, right? This is going to be epic. It's going to be the most epic thing that has ever happened in film and television history. Once you understand the nature of the mystery, guys, you'll realize it's a massive game. We are playing a massive game here. It's a puzzle, right? And it's gonna be fun. So let's have fun with the whole thing. Next is the must-have information. The same day that I found the Scranton Strangler, I went out and purchased the DVDs. I had and still have The Office on 2 separate streaming services, right? But I bought the DVDs because I wanted the unadulterated or the original version at the peak of the show. When I bought the DVDs, the Blu-rays were not available, but there were clues scattered in the menus as well. Not only that, certain episodes are syndicated, and what would usually be the deleted scenes are not included in the DVDs. They are only available on the streaming services. Likewise, a lot of the bonuses that are available on the DVDs are not available on the streaming services. So my suggestion, if you can, is to have both. The DVDs are ultimately the evidence file, guys. The video footage is our primary evidence. So if you're able, I've included a couple of affiliate links below, or get them wherever you can get them the cheapest, right? I would strongly suggest you have the DVDs and the streaming services because not all the episodes and available content is the same. Now, the video footage that I'm sharing with you guys is my personal DVD rips. It took me 1 week to rip all this content, to label it, so so on and so forth, I wanted to be certain that I had the complete version of The Office. Now, the way that they are labeled is as per the DVDs and how the DVDs play them. I've included a data burn, which you can see the title and also the timestamp of that particular scene or shot that I share with you. I'm sure some of you guys have already worked this out, but I just want to briefly mention it. The way that the episodes are titled is as such. The first digit denotes the season, the second two digits denote the episode. If it's a deleted scene, it will have a .1 next to it, and in the title it will also say deleted scene. If it's bonus content or bonus material, it will have the first digit as the season and just a 00 and the title of the bonus material. From this point onwards, every episode of the Anti Strangling Task Force will correspond with the same number of the show. So once I get to analyzing the pilot, the Anti Strangling Task Force episode will be called 101 Pilot. This is to allow detectives to go back and forth and re-research things as required with ease. Now, I also want to mention, guys, that these episodes are not scripted. I take a few notes down and I share my thoughts. Right, so occasionally there may be pronunciation errors or paraphrasing of the show, or there might be mistakes in my audio. I do my best to clean up the audio afterwards, but you're just going to have to forgive me with that. Right, they're not scripted. It is purely just me sharing my thoughts. Now, once again, out of respect for the Curse of 3, there will be a 3-week wait until the investigation begins. In the meantime, I am going to post some videos on Patreon giving a little bit more guidance to the task force, and there'll be a few more motif videos coming on YouTube as well. This 3 weeks will allow people to watch all the videos because on launch there is a significant amount of information to go through, and it will also allow people to familiarize themselves with the task force. Regardless of how many people join, at the end of 3 weeks, the investigation begins. This now brings me to the must-know information. This list is information you must know before we begin the investigation. The nature of the mystery has been designed in a way that you actually need to re-watch the show multiple times until you get it, right? But fortunately, I've spent my time doing that for you. So we're going to be able to theoretically go from season 1 to season 9 without having to watch it through again, right? If you've watched it through multiple times, you're already at an advantage because this will help. You should have a memory bank of various incidents in various episodes. But the stuff I'm about to mention to you, I'm assuming most of you won't know. Now, I've already mentioned the first one in this list, which is Dwight is a time traveler. There are other elements in his life story, but this one I need to mention now. Right, because the timeline of the show and the timeline of his life is something that is going to have to be monitored. Right, so Dwight is a time traveler. There is an alien being in the office, which can be comparable to the God bug from Star Trek. We get this from Kevin when he says there's a little being inside of him working him with controls, right? And when we get to that episode, you'll realize there's a puzzle we need to work out there, right? But this also falls into the directive of the extraterrestrial time traveling task force. They also monitor the God bug, but in some ways, every task force needs to be mindful of the fact that there is a God bug in the show that is able to take possession of other people's faculties. Michael knows that Dwight is a very dangerous character. He knows that he's also committing financial fraud because Michael is in fact a genius. Right, Michael is an incredibly smart individual. We're led to believe that he's this sort of goofy, bit of a stupid sort of a guy. It's completely the opposite. Michael is a genius and he knows what Dwight is doing. Furthermore, he's in fear of his life. And in the following episode here on YouTube, which is the season 1 overview, I'm going to touch a little bit more on that in detail. Next is that Meredith also knows. Meredith's life is in danger for the majority of the series. And there's numerous reasons for that, which I'm not going to get into right now, but Meredith knows Dwight is a very dangerous character. She's also in fear of her life. She's even having somewhat of a mental breakdown because of it. Meredith is a huge part of this mystery. Okay, so we need to focus in on the interactions between Meredith and Dwight and Meredith and the rest of the office. We really need to focus in on her because she knows Dwight is a murderer. Creed is Dwight's adopted father. He's not his biological father. Creed is his adopted father. And adopted is a very light way of putting it. When you watch all the task force overviews, I touch a little bit on that adopted relationship because it's not exactly a classic adoption how you'd think, right? But Creed is Dwight's adopted father. Which brings me to Kevin. Kevin is Dwight's adopted brother. And not only does Dwight have Kevin and Creed working in the office as his family, believe it or not, there are more members of Dwight's family working in the office. And this is one thing that's really kept under wraps throughout the series. Right? What I mean by that is it's kept under wraps from the camera crew and various other staff members, right? But there is somebody who does know, and that's Pam. Pam knows that they're brothers. Not only that, Pam tends to be the missing link, right, in a lot of the puzzles in each episode. Pam is also an integral part of this mystery. The way we need to see Pam is that Pam tends to have the insider information on all people in the office, right? Why and how that is, we'll get into the investigation, right? But Pam, we need to focus in on Pam. Pam is a very critically important character in this mystery because Pam knows. She knows a lot of stuff about Dwight, and not only Dwight, she knows a lot of stuff about other people in the office. Dwight has moles scattered throughout the organization as well as surveillance throughout the office and likely in the other offices in the company as well. I'm talking about video surveillance, audio surveillance, having access to their emails, access to the phone lines. There's good reasons to believe the phone lines are just generally insecure in the office, right? So we need to be mindful from the very beginning. Dwight has surveillance in the office. So for now, guys, I know probably a lot of that stuff in the list is already blowing your mind, right? But you need to understand these things first. And we're going to get to those episodes where we're shown that Creed is Dwight's adopted father. That actually happens twice in the show, where that's implied very strongly. And it's a little bit more subtle with Kevin being Dwight's adopted brother, but it's still relatively obvious. It comes back to what I said in the previous episode, guys. Once we understand the language that the writers use, everything is just going to start to pop into place and you'll start to notice things in a lot more detail. Now, guys, that is the end of the enlistment and briefing episode, right? The following episode is the season 1 preview where I cover the rest of the intro sequence, because the intro sequence, the entire intro sequence, is filled with clues and direction. It provides us with direction, and I'm going to break that down for you. This is going to be an epic adventure, guys. I really hope you come on the journey with me. Remember, you can join the Discord for life. Just 1 month subscription. You will have access to it for life. You will be a part of the Anti Strangling Task Force for life. You will also have access to the other 5 Task Force overview videos immediately. Right, so join the Anti Strangling Task Force because we need your help. There has been a murder, and Dwight is our suspect. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the Anti Strangling Task Force on Patreon for exclusive episode analysis.